52 Weeks of Peace campaign with the ministers and preachers in these churches to reach out with them, to talk with the young people. We're trying to do the same thing in the school district as often as we possibly can. So I think it's about intervening in a young person's life. I'm an advocate for the curfew center. I know my opponents may disagree, but the numbers show that if you can intervene in somebody's life, as Councilman Peduto said more eloquently than I did yesterday, a 10-year-old that's on the street at midnight becomes a 12-year-old that's breaking into a car, that becomes a 20-year-old that has an AK-47 in his or her hands. We need to intervene. That's why that curfew center, I cannot believe we're having a debate over $500,000 in a $430-some million budget about a curfew center, about young people. It's the right thing to do, and I'll be quiet, Rod, because I could go on, and I want to give the other candidates a chance to respond to the question.
Ms. Robinson.
Just quickly, I want to start with the curfew center, and I'll get back to what I would do. Just provide the statistics. This isn't the first time we've had a curfew center. The first time we had a curfew center, I was on the police department. We didn't take many people to that curfew center. Didn't work. So my question is I don't see anything new. I've seen the plan, I've seen the idea, I understand, I'm a bit of an expert in the area. It just seems like we're just trying the same old programs. The other thing I'd like to say is Pittsburgh Promise, while it's all in good, and I love the fact that anybody supporting anyone who wants to go to college and giving them money, but we have 60% of African Americans dropping out of high school. Now we have a high percentage, about 42% of just everyone else dropping out of high school. The problem is Pittsburgh Promise doesn't go far enough. They give $40,000 at the end. We need to get our kids through school. We need to start at the middle school level. We need to provide help with our Pittsburgh public school system. The mayor should take more leadership from his bully pulpit to make sure that the school board and our school system is functioning properly. They are not. The numbers don't suggest it. We spend $16,000 almost, I think $16,000 per pupil, and we are failing our children. And the reason why we have crime is because of that, because they're feeling hopeless. And that's a problem. So we need to put money in community centers to give our children something to do. We have to bring arts and music back to our schools. I found out when my son was in the public school, this was the first time that he's in Catholic school, but from kindergarten through 4th grade, he was in public school. They took out art and they took out music. Do you know what that does for a child? For a child that needs another outlet other than education. And so now we're telling the Pittsburgh Promise that the only benefits you're going to get is if you go to college. What about the trades? What about small business and entrepreneurship? It just doesn't go far enough.
Thank you. Just a second, Mr. Dowd. Would you please turn off all your cell phones? Interruption is a little distracting. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think the key point here is to change lives of young people before they pick up the gun, before they get to the point where they're committing acts of violence. And so I agree with Ms. Robinson. I disagree with her statistic on dropout, but I agree with her on the main point. That dropout, particularly for African American males, we know is the largest problem that the school system has. And we can talk about the promise. I'm a big supporter of that and will continue to be. But we need to look at the numbers. It is true that we're seeing students take advantage of that, but when we start to disaggregate the data and look at who's actually getting that opportunity, we're going to see that right now there are a large number of African American males absent from the promise. I haven't seen the data, but I'm sure that that's the case just because of the trend lines in the school system. So we've got to change that. And you've got to do that in a couple of different ways. Ms. Robinson's right, you've got to go back, you've got to start at the earliest of ages. That's what the reform project that I was a part of at the school system, that was its entire focus. You start at early childhood programming and you get focused on developing reading and writing and math skills in young people before they get to middle school, and then in middle school you're actually setting a trajectory for high school graduation where all kids can be successful. Those reforms are in place. We are making progress. I know that it's not entirely popular, but the district is making progress on those fronts, and we have to continue to push. We also need to think, and this is where, as mayor, I would be an advocate for education. We really need to start thinking about how, as I said at the beginning, we bring the school system and the city together. How can we bring the city schools and the city together? They are serving the same common population, the parents and the students that live in the city. So how do we bring them together? We need to focus on programming inside of the schools We also need a mayor who's going to advocate for charter schools here in the city. Charter schools offer more choice, they get people connected to their schools, they get families and students connected, and they give them a sense of identity and success, and we know that that's been working with certain reforms of the charter law. That can work in this city. We need more of that. The city itself also needs to get focused on recreational opportunities after school for kids. That's a huge problem. If you look at what happens, the mayor's worried about what happens at night in the dark time. That's true. We do have issues, but we also have issues right after the bell rings, and quite frankly, during the daytime. So let's also find out what we can do to reduce truancy, and let's think about after-school programming and what the city can do to advocate on those fronts. I've spent a long time working on these education issues, and I'm completely dedicated to finding a way to bringing the school system and the city together to better serve the kids of the city.
All right, thank you. Now this goes to each one of you, and I'd like to hear how you answer this. Why are you more qualified than your opponents to run this city? And is qualified how you would describe the difference? Let's begin with Ms. Robinson.
Well, I find that I'm qualified because educationally I'm qualified, so we don't need to talk about that. I'm qualified because I'm in touch with the people of Pittsburgh. I understand them. I'm a traditional Pittsburgher. I'm a product of a blue-collar family. I was a blue-collar person myself, and I revel in it. I still say we, I did this. I still include myself as a police officer. But I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and went to law school during the day while I worked at night. I was a sergeant on the police force in Zone 5. I think that public safety is a huge issue in the city of Pittsburgh, and I am the only public safety servant in the race. I'm the only one that can tell you whether these ideas like the curfew center will actually work. They're just sitting here talking about the numbers, looking at the statistics, but I've seen it in action. Also, we have a mayor here that makes decisions all of the time without consulting his solicitor. I am an attorney, but I'm smart enough to consult the solicitor. I think that sometimes that our mayor lacks life skills, doesn't understand spirometer is not the same as mine. That's why I feel that I'm far more superior than he in that area. I also feel like I have a pulse on the people. I have a willingness to listen. I don't have an ego. I can be told I'm wrong. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to do some things for the greater good, not for my good. And I'm above reproach. I am not going to sell the office of the mayor. I'm not going to do it. It doesn't matter, like I said earlier, whether he is indicted or convicted. The fact that he has sullied the reputation of the city because of pay for play makes me a better candidate than he is. Thank you.
Ms. McDowell.
I have to follow that. I actually, you know, it's interesting to me. I'm not sure that I would say that anyone is more or less qualified, because I think it's a democracy and we can all run and are all qualified in that sense. So that's the first thing I point out. What I will talk about is my experience and what I think that I bring to this office. First of all, I've had a lot of different experience. I've lived in Pittsburgh. I've lived in other cities. I came here, you know, when I moved to Pittsburgh, I didn't know one person when I moved here. I came here and fell in love with this city. I fell in love with its people. And I've done a lot of different things here. I've had a lot of different jobs as a teacher. I've worked in a lot of different restaurants here. I've had a lot of different experience. And I think I understand what it is to work hard and to pull yourself up, to do things by yourself, not on your own, with the help of others. I know how to build coalitions. That's how I ended up running for a school board seat. I understand how it is to think about an organization and see it as a structure and understand how it needs to better serve people. I understand how to make it a performance-oriented government rather than a patronage system. I have a record of doing that. I also believe that I have a desire to stay connected to the people. My experiences door knocking have led me to do the same, to continue that same practice as a council member. I don't just door knock as a candidate. I've been, you know, out and connected in my council district since taking office, and it's that desire that I would carry into the mayor's office. So a couple of things: experience, a variety of experiences as a doctoral candidate, a teacher, a cook, all sorts of different things. Experience building coalitions as a candidate, and then as a board member, and now as a council member. And I think an understanding of organizations and how to see them and reorganize and better design them.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'll say the same thing, experience.